So what we will do here is first, so we will create a simple container and let's say row, and here we have two columns and another div column. So this is called 3 and this is called 9. Okay, here we are creating some interface of some details. Initially I will give few elements, later we will work with different types of elements. So I am creating a term, some name. So input type is text. Okay, and we have price. So we have input type number. So another one is shipped to. Okay, shipped to is a drop down. We are creating a drop down which is select with an option here. So select city. Okay, option we defined some city. Okay, next another term we have stock. So input type is checkbox. So and okay, so this is having a label some available. Okay, next this is the data we are having. So now we have different types of elements. There are various elements available here. Let's put this with some classes. Form control and the number also form control, and this is the class form select, and this is form switch and form check input. Okay, now this is the design. That means we have some form here. Let's put a simple header in this. So register product. Okay, that's a simple form that we created. In this, user can enter name, user can select the price, enter any price. So user can select a city, user can choose the value from a checkbox. So now user, when selecting these, we need to collect the data from them and we need to use the data. As of now we are just collecting the data. Later we will submit to backend database APIs. So much we will do. So initially, how do we collect data from all this? Generally, to do that, in JavaScript, what we do, we use various types of DOM methods. By using the DOM methods, we collect data from all this. Now, how to handle the data from this? Means how to collect the data and how to handle this. So what we have to do for that, let's see. This is a simple example. Later we will use all different types of elements. We will create different elements. So when user is entering the details, we have to collect the details and display. I want to display the details in the right column. Here we will put product details. So here we want to display those product details. So I will just keep here is padding S4. So the product details I'm just trying to display just beside it. Now, how to collect the data from this element and display here. So first point is whatever data entered in these elements, we have to collect them and store. Then we need a state. So we are configuring a state. So here actually name, price, city and stock, 4 values are there. Then no need to declare 4 references. In one reference we can store 4 details. That means what I will do is I will create a product, and this product we will use it as an object. So and we have set product, and here we will use state, and this product I will configure as the product we will configure as an object. The product is configured as an object because object can handle multiple keys and values. So what are the keys you are expecting? One is name, so it is a string type, and price, it is a number, and city is a string, and stock is a boolean. I will just put it as a false. This is the data we are expecting. So now whatever data entered in these text boxes, we have to collect the data. Remember, as of now we don't have a form. If there is a form, it becomes little easier. Why? Because so through form you can collect all data at a time. But you know already in JavaScript and HTML combination you learned, every time we don't use a form element. When we use form element to design a form, when you are trying to submit to the server, if you are trying to handle some client side interactions without submitting to server, then we design a form without a form. Means we design a form interface without any form, because form is going to submit. You know the nature of the form, right? However, we can prevent submissions and all lot of points are there, I will tell you. As of now, just collect the data from these elements and store them and display them. So where to display these product details? These product details we need to display just here right side. I will create a list. In that name, I want to display name in data definition. So we use a binding expression. So what is the object? Product. So product dot name. That is how we can access. Next, we will use another term, price, and data definition. This is product dot price. Okay. So we have a shipper 2. This is product. So product dot what? City. And stock. Here we expecting stock as a boolean, and you know how to present a boolean. So to present a boolean, you need a binding of product dot stock is equal to what? True. Then display as available. otherwise display as out of stock. Why we cannot directly show product dot stock? Because we already learned data binding, basics of data binding. React cannot show a boolean value, so you have to handle the booleans with logic and create a presentation for that. Directly it cannot display boolean true or false. We already learned that in data. Now you see the data is here. Now initially it is out of stock because it is default false. These are all having empty because they are default with some value. Now whatever value entered in this text box, we have to collect and display them. Then how React can do the data binding? So every element in React, if you want to identify what is entered inside it, then for every element you need to configure a function. That means we have to define a function. So one function handle name change. What this function will do is identify the changes in name field. That means we will collect the value. How? Through E. And where to store that value? So we have to store the name inside this product name. Inside the product name we need to store it. So how to get the product name? How to set a value into this? So by using a setter, what we have to do, set product. Set product, and set product is expecting an object. So it is expecting an object. In that object, what is the field? Field is what? Name. Okay. What is the value in that name? The value coming from text box. How to collect value from the text box? E dot target dot value. Value indicates what value is in the text box. You know how HTML elements return their value, right? So we know the attributes of HTML, right? So we are collecting the value. Okay. Now this handle name change should work when user is changing the name. So here what we have to do, on change. On change handle name change. That's how it works. Now when I go to the name field and started typing here, that means we are entering the details. Now it will collect it. That means we are accessing the data and displaying. So now how do you collect the price? That means now again you have to define another event. So function handle what it is, price change, and set product. And in set product here, now problem will come. If you set price, okay, if you set price E dot what? Target dot value. E dot target dot value. Now what will be name, city and stock? If you set name, what about others? What about others is they will take the initialized values. They will take the initialized values means they will reset. They will reset. It will be empty. That means now here, let's see. Okay, let's write here what it is, on change. So handle what? Price change. That means we are handling two details. Let's refresh this. I'm entering name. Okay. After that, I'm entering price. Name is deleted. Why it is happening? Can you tell me why it is happening? Because you are using set product means it is reinitializing the memory. Every time the memory is reinitialized. If memory is reinitialized, they will reset. But what is the advantage of state we discussed? It can store the value and make it available for the next request. That is the advantage of a state. That's the reason we are not using a variable. How then what we can do is, if you entered name, then already if price, city, stock are stored by state, then collect them and use them. That means what about price? Price comes from product dot price. Product is a state now. In that state, already if they saved some price, that will be kept and it will be collected. So similarly, next what? City. Product dot what? City. And similarly stock, that is product dot stock. Now the same thing I have to handle everywhere. If price is collected from text box, what about name? That means name must be product dot name, means whatever the previous name they entered inside it. Only price is new. And what about city? Same, product dot city. What about stock? So that is product dot stock. Means collecting data from several elements in a form. In a React way, if you have to do, this is the approach. That's the reason many people are not satisfied with React. Right? That means, but what is the advantage for developers is there are so many third parties. Those third party integrations will make it very simple. So without writing all these complex logics, we can easily handle. Those I will show you later. First, we will know the traditional way, how React actually manages the data binding. So there is no other way. This is the only way how React manages. Then React depends on lot of third parties which solves these issues and makes it simple. React alone is not great. React is great because of its plugins and because of its supported frameworks. React internally uses lot of supported frameworks easy plugged in. Because of that, it is very popular. So in React way, if you have to do everything, then it's very lengthy. There is no other chance. This is the only way you have to manage. Now see, I have to write another one. What is it? So another function. This time, this is for what? Handle which one? City change. On city change, name is same. This also coming from product dot what? Price. But city we collect from the element e dot target dot value. The value entered in drop down. And we will have one more. What is it? Stock change. Handle stock change. In stock change, this is same product dot what? Price. City also same. Stock is coming from e dot target dot. It is a checkbox you are binding. So checkbox whether checked or not value na, that is through which property checked. That means what is the attribute to bind that you know according to the element that you are using. You know your HTML elements. How you know checkbox selected or not? That is through checked. So you will not collect value every time. So you have to check the selected. So checked whether it is selected or not. Okay. Now we need to bind them here. Okay. On city change. On change. So handle what city change. Handle city change. Here checkbox on change. What it is, handle what? Stock change. These are the functions we need to bind. Now let's see here. I will refresh and I'm entering the details. Name, it is collecting, and the price. Now name is not removed. State can keep the data and make it available across the requests. And ship to is selected here. That means which city you are selecting, it is displaying. Stock, and you can see available or out of stock edition. That means it is changing accordingly. So this is how we have to handle data binding in React. That is the reason I showed you. You see, this is the website npmjs.com. When you open this is a Node Package Manager official website. I will search here React form. We will search for React form. And you search, they will provide you so many React form libraries. So many React form libraries. You see, there is a React hook form. There is a React select. So many formic. So simple React form, React final form. If you ask any React developers in real world project, so how you are managing your data binding, then they will answer with any third party. And it is not necessary that everybody have to use the same third party. Some people purchase third parties and use them, like Telerik and all. Actually, you see, these are all the forms of React. How many are there? So many. And why these are all present here? Because real way, it will take complex, very lengthy approach. That's what you have seen now. And see what these people will do. I will show you here. This is React hook form. Later you are going to learn how to use them, right? For later, after learning few concept, you will understand. This is a React hook form. This is React hook form. We have yesterday I showed you, like, there is a library called what? Formic. This is a formic form. This is a formic. These are all third parties. These are all third parties. And you see, as I showed you, build forms in React without the tiers. Why they are concerned about this? Because React have problems in this, and only third parties will resolve these issues. There are so many third parties, like there is Telerik. Telerik is also a third party. These are the customers of Telerik. NASA, Microsoft, IBM. These are the customers of Telerik. And go to the demos. You will see Telerik provides support for React. And this is not free. You have to pay. They will provide React. So they call it as Can Do React. And you see here in React, they will provide you lot of components here. they are going to present lot of components. These are all the components, and see the highlights. See the popular React components. In popular React components, you will find a form compulsory. Right? That means IBM is a customer of Telerik. Microsoft is a customer of Telerik. Means what? IBM, Microsoft developers can't build forms. Right? They can't build forms. They can build forms, but they don't want their developers to waste the time. So React means 70-80% all third-party integrations. So the React way how it does everything, it is lengthy. What is the great advantage about it is it can easily plug in any extensions related to any technology that makes fast. So this is these third parties how to use later I will show. But first you need to understand the basic approach how the React handles data binding. So collecting the data from a form and storing in the state, identifying the changes and updating those changes into the data. This is one approach. Okay, let's do another one. That means this is one example I am showing. So here, process yesterday already explained. Means how we have to collect the data, how to bind, what event is required, everything I explained. I am giving here data binding.jsx. Okay, I will show you the complexities here. See, suppose if anybody asked you like, no, I don't want like this. I want the user to allow to enter all details. After he finish it, then I will collect the data at a time through a button click. Currently, I entered name is updated. I entered price is updated. No, first let the user enter all the details, then collect the details and send them. As of now, you are showing that's okay. But in reality, what happens is, so in reality, we will not send every value directly to the database while typing the value. So we will collect and handle. So if anybody asked you a simple point like, put a button here, that means we will keep a button. So I will just put a button here and say some submit, and class is some btn primary nw100. Okay, so this is a submit button. Now what is the point is, when user types the data, when user enters the data, it should not update there. It should wait until user enters all the details. After entering all the details, finally we need to submit. Finally we need to submit. Now tell me how. How do we collect all the data? Remember, what you typed in first text box, it should be collected. No DOM method like get element by IDs and all, because React cannot use DOM. React uses only virtual DOM. So how you will collect? So point is, these methods are compulsory. Without these functions, you cannot handle change. What is entered in an element, you cannot handle without the event on change. So every element on change is compulsory. But when they are entering those details, we are collecting and storing in which location, product. means all the data is stored in this product. Okay, let's do one thing. I will create another object. So this is, so the detail like form data. We are using form data. Now I will use here set form data. Okay, and use state, it is again an object. It is again an object type. So that means the data that you collected in the product, so you push into this form data, into the form data when button is clicked. So this form data contains same fields. What are the fields? So that means it comprises of same fields like name, price, city, and stock. Remember, still you haven't learned any event handling center. If you learn them, you will learn little simple approach. Little simple, but not very simple approach, because React don't have that. Very simple means a third party is mandatory, right? So now here we will, what we will do is, we will use this form data here. So we are not displaying product name, we are using form data name. From form data name, from form data price, and from form data city, and from form data stock. Like this we are defining. That means now what happens is, when user is entering the details, so it is not updated. We will wait until all the data is entered. All the data is entered. And finally, when click submit, this must be updated into this object. Tell me how to copy data of one object into another in JavaScript. There are so many techniques. There are so many techniques. So how you access that? That means here we are collecting the data on click. So what we have to do? Function. What is the function? Handle submit click. Handle submit click. That is the function we have to do. Okay, on submit click, what we need to do? So we need to add the data, add the data into this object, data into that object. So what is the basic here? Suppose, so set form data. Into the form data, it is expecting name, price, city, and all these details. And we will send the product data. Is it not okay? So I will write this on handle click. That means what we will do? On click, on click. Handle what? Submit click. On submit click. Now what happens here is, we are collecting the details and it is not typing them, accessing the price and a city and a stock, and click submit, it is updated. So a simple approach of initialize the value that you collected from the product and assign into the new object that you created. It's a simple copying. You don't need anything else. This is basic approach, right? That means access the data and define. So now when I am doing any modification, it is not updating those modification, and I click submit, it will update. That's a simple, very simple approach. So you created an object which will hold the data that you entered from the form, and directly we are not updating in the UI. So we are storing that in another object, and that you are collecting and displaying. Remember, this is your beginning levels. So that is the reason I am showing you the approach how JavaScript people understand this process. Later, so many complex techniques are there. We will see, we will explore them, because we are not in the concept of form. When we are in the concept of form, it's a big concept. We will discuss a lot of things about handling forms. It's a separate session on React forms. We will discuss. Here we are not dealing with form. Means here we are dealing with a technique called data binding. That's only the point we are handling here. Okay. So what is the approach followed now here? We are just collecting the data from an object, and we are pushing this data into this location, right? This is so not while modifying the data, just collect the data and manage it here. Later, when I explain you about forms, lot of other techniques I will explain here. So this is another example I am giving. So data binding dot JSX. Okay. Now you understood two basics. So how do we collect data from an element, and how do we store in a reference, and how we display? That's the simple approach we learned. For that, you understood that on change is compulsory. Immediately while changing, if you want to update, you can do. If you want to wait until the data is entered and do on any another event, then you have to write other events also. This is first basic. Next regular requirement is how you will initialize some data at the time of loading the components. That means usually this is use state. So here this is important. We configured use state. When state is created, this is the first important question. That means here the first one of the question in interviews is when state is created for a component. So when state is created for a component, this is a question here. So actually React flow I will explain in the coming levels. You will see that means how entire React application works architecture. I will tell you. So generally the component that you designed, it has several phases which you are going to learn in a topic called component life cycle. We will understand the life cycle. Component have various phases. The first phase of component is when user requests a component, that component is created. Means a component object is created, an instance of component is created. After component is created, at the time of creating component, lot of activities will happen. So later I am going to explain you phases of component. Don't worry, that's a separate concept. Actually, component have several phases. The first phase is when a component is requested. So a component is created. A component is first created. Means, in JavaScript we have a class. So how do we access the members of class? First, we have to create an instance for class. We have to create an instance for class. So first the component is created. A component is created. When component is created, lot of activities will happen in this creation phase. In that, one option is state is configured. State is configured. I told you that we will learn about life cycle in a separate session later. So when we learn the life cycle, you will understand all the phases and in every phase how it works. So a component, at the time of creating component for you, the state is configured. After that, along with that, lot of other things will happen. So lot of other things will happen. Later you will see them. So when state is created for a component, state is configured for a component at the time of creating the component. After creating the component have a phase called mount. Component have a phase called mount, which you generally call page load, body onload. That means you want certain actions to perform at the time of loading the page, where you will write in JavaScript, you want some actions to perform at the time of loading the page. Then where you write, you usually have a body onload. Onload, some actions are performed. So this is that load. That means mount phase. So is the phase that indicates the actions to perform at the time of loading. That means now first phase component is created. Second phase component mounts, means component loads. After that, third phase component updates, and fourth phase component will unmount. These are the basic phases actually. So every component in React have these phases. So this is very big concept for React developers, which you will learn in a separate session actually. So first phase, create the component. Second, load the component. Third, identify the changes, actions, perform everything on which phase, update. So then after that, mount. Usually when a component unmounts, means it is destroyed. It is not destroyed after you finished using it. It is destroyed when you navigate to another component. That means you finished the component. The memory is still available. The memory of component is maintained until or unless you change to another component or you close the application. That means when component will unmount, when you close the application or when you change from one component to another. So you are moving from one component to another, just like one page to another. So then automatically this unmount will work. It will destroy all the memory for that. So state is configured at the time of creation. So at the time of creation, you can initialize the state. You can initialize the state. With some values, you can initialize the state. But I want some values to be stored dynamically coming from some API. Right? That means at the time of loading, means at the time of mounting, I want to store some data into the state. So then how do you write the mount phase? That is very important. So when state is created, you got an answer for this. So state is configured for component at the time of creating instance for component. At the time of creating instance for component. So state is configured for component at the time of creating instance for then the question here is how you will configure actions for component, how you are how you will configure actions for component at the time of loading component, how you will configure actions for component at the time of loading component. That's another point. So generally HTML, so so here the key answer is component have mount phase, so which is the loading phase. So component have mount phase, which is the loading phase. A function component configures mount phase, using a hook called use effect. Use effect is a hook. This is important. What is use state? Configure the state. What is use effect? To define the actions at the time of loading component. So what actions to perform at the time of loading the component? At the time of loading the component. This is defined by using use effect. Use effect is a hook in that function. Actually, a class component configures mount phase using the methods. We have two methods actually. One is component did mount and component will mount and did mount. Component will mount and component did mount. I told you that in React we have class components and function. First we are dealing with function components, then later we will see class. So if you are designing a function component, the mount phase is written by using a hook called use effect. That means if you want to define any actions at the time of loading the component, then you have to define in a hook called use effect. Actually, how use effect works, see. That means what I want to do is, at the time of loading the component, I want some name to be assigned into this state. State is configured. While mounting, I want to define. Then how to write here? Use effect. Use effect is a hook. We have to import from the React core library, right? And use effect uses a callback function. Callback function we will write just like a arrow method. It's a shortcut technique. Use effect is just a callback function. And here you just write the actions on load. That's it. That means it is just like body load. That means for pages you write body on load. For components you write mount. On mount, some actions must be done. Those actions you write here. Those actions you call here. So the actions that you want on mount, you have to define. And it is interesting point here is, it is like a constructor in a class. Constructor in a class. But this is not a class, it's a function. What is the nature of constructor? Nature. The nature of constructor is the constructor execute only once. It executes only once per an object. So how many times the component will mount? Component will mount only once, one time. But if any new data is sent into it, it should mount again. It should load again. So use effect is a hook. After writing the callback function, it requires dependencies. It requires dependencies. This is an array, am I right? Array. This is mandatory to mention for load. What is this is nothing but it indicates when I should load again. That means when I should mount again. Empty indicates no need to mount again. That means only once. But later we can pass some values into it. That means later we will say that if name changed, mount again. If ID changed, mount again. If price changed, mount again. That means we can tell dependencies. Dependencies means they define when the component have to mount again. So as of now, there are no dependencies, and mentioning the dependencies is mandatory. Otherwise, this mount repeats again and again when you reload the contents. So mentioning about the dependency is mandatory, even it is not having dependencies. And why it is array? It is array because there can be multiple dependencies. That means what is the condition of loading? There can be several conditions. It's not one condition. That means in different conditions it will load again. And those dependencies you will see in further stages how dependencies are defined. So this is the syntax of use effect, how you configure use effect. So how do we define the use effect? Syntax I will give here. First you have to import. So use effect. So from React, that is the core here. And you need to write use effect, which uses a callback, and it have dependencies. So here you have actions, and here it have one more option. Here is dependencies. You can define the dependencies. So dependencies specify when a component have to mount again. Dependencies specify when a component have to mount again. That's what the basic point about dependencies. Actually, use effect have a unmount phase also. We'll see that. So that means this is as of now, first we will see mount. Later, entire life cycle we will see how it happens. So why you need this? Because whenever a component is loading, At the time of loading the component, you want some actions to perform. Usually, initializing and configuring of data coming from various sources, we generally do on mount, right? So here, what I'm doing is, at the time of mounting, here use effect I am writing, and I will use set form data. In the form data, I am accessing some price field, and I am defining some price like this. That means at the mount phase, I am defining some price. It will put that. So we are not initializing the price. So at the in state price is empty. So we are configuring the price at the time of mounting the components, right? That means actually this price comes from some third party, means some API. It comes from some API. We have to collect and we have to display. Then how do we define that? So by using this approach, that means on mount phase. Let's see that point, how it works, right? So how do we write the loading phase? The loading phase is defined by using use effect, right? So what is use state? To configure the state. To configure the state so that you can store the data. And use effect is to define actions to perform on mount, right? So let's see one example now, means how we can manage. So what we will do now is we will see one simple approach of, so binding data from API. One example we will see here, how we can bind data from API. One small example we will see. Actually, till now what we done is we kept data. So we kept data in directly in a state, and we are accessing and presenting the data. How we can bind the data coming from an API? How we can access the data coming from any API? First point, you can maintain data offline or you can access data online. Offline data means you create some JSON file, keep the data in that JSON file, and you can access and use it. Or if there is any API really running, you can access the data and use it. I will show you both techniques. Now tell me, in JavaScript, what is the technique used for accessing data from an API? So JavaScript originally uses XML HTTP request. Any technology in the world finally have to use this one, because that is the only method understandable to browser. This is the only object understandable to browser. Fetch and other techniques are introduced to simplify it, but browser understands only through an object called XML HTTP request. So you can use this XML HTTP request object. I think you learned this in JavaScript as X. So you can use fetch to fetch the data from any remote API, or you can use any third parties. Third party library you can use. I will show you can use jQuery AJAX. You can use jQuery AJAX methods. So to communicate with the data coming from any API, access the data and use, you can use any of these techniques. You can use XML HTTP request. You can use fetch. So you can use jQuery, Ajax, or any other third party. In JavaScript, I hope you learned these two, right? XML, HTTP request, and fetch. Let's see one example here. First, I will do one thing. I am not using any type of online. I am not using any API. Later we will use. I will go to this public folder, and in the public folder I will maintain a new file by name. The file name is products.json. So I created a JSON file. So it's a JSON data. In this products JSON, let's add some data. You know how to create a JSON file. So I'm just creating an array. So I will use first, I will use a simple approach, right? A simple concept, right? Simple means what we will do is, let's say in this products, we will add some object. One is what? Name. So it is some name. And we have some price and price. Just let's keep only these two details. Another object, and we have name, some Nike casuals, okay, and we have price, and some price is defined here. Okay, now I need to access this data in present. So generally in JavaScript, how you do and how here it works, let's see. Now what I am doing is, I will go and access here a component. Let's add a component, a separate folder for component. So some API data binding, right? So I'm just using API data binding. Add a new file, API data binding dot JSX. Okay, let's create a function here. So export function. So the function is API data binding. Okay, and it will return a simple fragment. So class container fluid. Okay, and here just we will put as products list, products table, something. We need to bring the table and display here data. Now what is the data you are expecting? So we will configure constant. Whatever data comes, we have to store. To store, I will create products, set products. Am I right? And it is use state, and it is an array. You can make it strongly typed also. Array of what type you are expecting also you can tell. So array of what type we are expecting, name, and another one is price. So name is string type and price is number type. Okay. Now from where the data comes, data is coming from a JSON file. How do we access the data? So generally in JavaScript, how you do? I will write a function called load data. It is an internal function for reusability concerns. Now this should make an AJAX request, get the data from the file and use it. How JavaScript does? In JavaScript, to make an AJAX call, we usually create an XML HTTP. It is an XML HTTP request object. So JavaScript can handle the AJAX request by using this. Not JavaScript, any technology in the world which is using AJAX finally maps to this object. That means Angular, React, or any jQuery, any third-party library, they internally use this object only finally. XML HTTP request. Okay. Now how to make a request? HTTP dot open. Am I right? It should open the request. So open to which location? What is the path? The path is products dot what JSON, where it is present in public. One of the advantage of our application is in Webpack. Webpack is the configuration file. In that Webpack, already these folders are defined with the path mapping. That means the public folder is designed in such a way that anything you keep in it, you can access from any component directly. How these configurations are set, at the end you will learn. While learning how to create a React application from scratch, everything, there you will learn about that. As of now, you can just refer to the file, products.json. Okay. What are the syntaxes for this open method? You know already. So it is first, it is expecting method. What is the method? Get from which location? Products dot what? JSON. And true. What it is true means, is it asynchronous or not? This is a JavaScript method. In JavaScript AJAX, the open method contains three arguments. First argument, what is the request method? You are fetching, then get. You are sending, then post. You are modifying, then put. You are removing, then delete. So we are fetching. Okay, from where we are fetching? Products.json. True. Asynchronous, true. Otherwise, it uses a blocking mechanism. Asynchronous means along with the other requests, it will process this request. Otherwise, it will block all other requests, right? It is always important to be asynchronous. Okay. After that, HTTP dot send. After configuring the request, you have to send the request. After the request is sent, now the response will come. So what is the event for response? HTTP dot on ready state change. Am I right? It uses a function. What is this function? This function executes when the response is ready. That means it is just like then method. In fetch, you have a then. What is then? Then indicates that actions to perform when the request is successful. That means now what happens when the request is ready, successfully executed? When request is successfully executed, you know that it have four phases. What are those four phases? So in JavaScript AJAX, what are the four phases of a successful request? First phase, initial. Second phase, process. Third phase, success. And fourth phase, ready. Fourth phase, ready. That means the response is ready on which phase? Fourth. So that means what we have to do is, if HTTP dot ready state is equal to 4. If ready state is equal to 4, because ready states will be from 1 to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 is initial. 2 is processing. 3 is successfully completed. 4th is response ready. When response ready, we have to get the response. But response text is in a string form. We have to convert into JSON and store in set products. Am I right? Into set products, we have to collect the response text. So then we will use JSON dot what? Parse. HTTP dot what? Response text. We have to get the response text, convert into JSON and store in this set products. This is all your JavaScript. This is nothing React. This is general JavaScript AJAX. Right? That means you are making an AJAX call in JavaScript through XML HTTP request object. You are accessing the data and you are storing the data in these products. Now, load data is a function that should execute at the time of loading the component, at the time of mounting the component. How to write component mount phase? Use effect. Use effect is the mount phase, and dependencies empty, no dependencies. And on the mount phase, just load data, call the function. Actually, you can write all that functionality here. Right, just for clarity's sake, what we have done, we maintained a separate function where we made a AJAX call and we are calling that here. So now the data will be finally stored inside these products. Now what we will do is we will print the products data here. So we will create a table. So in the table, we are using some class name, table and table hover, and we have t head. So tr and th, we are expecting two fields. What is it? So name and price. Okay, let's keep this in the startup now. Go to index.js. Here I will remove data binding and I will put API data binding component in startup. That means API data binding is in the startup and you can see it is using API data binding. Oh, where it is? New is not mentioned. Is equal to new XML HTTP request. I am not using new. Okay, right. Fine. Now this it is ready. Now we need to present the data present in that particular array. Right? How we do that? Data is in this products array now. This products array contains the data coming from the file. How do you do that? We will use tbody. Already last session we learned how to present the data binding expression. So what we have to do? Products dot what? Map. We have to read what? Product. For every product, what we need to do? We need to create a row. The row contains key. The key I will just use product dot name. So and in this row, so you need two cells. In the first cell, we need to print what it is, product name. In the next cell, we need to print what? Product price. So it should get the data and display the data here. Now it is showing some issues. What are the issues you see here? Because when we are using jQuery AJAX, now you can see this is the jQuery AJAX. And what is the data here? Let's observe here now. On load, I am using console.log. So we are using console.log. Console.log, I will use products. Understood? Products. That means what the products is going to do? The products is going to return an array with all these details, but it is only one. Now what is happening here? This data is not assigned. This data is not assigned into the state. This data is not assigned into the state. That means the state is configured with some data, initialized with the data. So suppose I will remove this now. That means it's an empty. That means we are not using anything. And you can see there is no data. It is an empty array. What we have to do now is whatever data is collected through the AJAX request, this data need to be sent into this location. Okay, we will do here one more here. Let's see the response text. What response text is coming? Console.log. We will use http dot what? Response text. We are using response text, right? And this response text we are accessing, and refresh this here. uh, Load data is there. What is it? I think some issue is there. Let's check. Some on ready state change.
अरे तो जो पैसा जो ले ली सब वो भी देगी, पैसा जमा करेगी बाद में, तो वो खत्म उसका कैसे लेके खत्म हो जाएगा उसका ना।
On ready state change have some function issue. Let's check that. What is the issue is there in this?
हफ्ता जमा कीजिए आप ना 9:30 में
Means data is not received from the products JSON.
अरे 9 बज गया रे।
So returning empty array only. On ready state change.
तो का बाल चम कर रहा था, मेरा भी चम पीछे खाली था, आगे का ना।
Let's get the response text. HTTP response text. Data is not coming here. Let's make a change. Open method is there. We'll keep a XML HTTP request. This is on ready state change. Let me write that. No, let's check. On ready state change. Huh? All are lowercase. Huh? Yeah. Okay, fine. Huh? So the capitalization issues on ready state change. Okay. Now what you are doing here, we are accessing the data from the JSON file and it is displaying all the data here. This is JavaScript AJAX method. What is JavaScript AJAX? JavaScript AJAX will allow to make a request to any API, fetch the data and use it. But this is lengthy approach. There are some issues in this AJAX. That's the reason people go with the concept of fetch. What is fetch? Fetch is a promise. So what is difference between a callback and a promise? If you know the difference, then you can understand the point. I will explain that here. So what are the basic method you have seen now? First method is accessing data using XML HTTP. Now let's see the other techniques. How we can interact with the data. First, I will show you with the basic data that we have in a JSON. Later, we will use real-time API. That means we will use some real-time APIs, get the data from there, and create an interface by using that. That we'll see in next session. Right? Tomorrow we will do that. So in tomorrow's session, our concept is working with API data. How to get the data from API and use. For that, we will learn all the AJAX methods, all the AJAX requests from JavaScript to third party, all how they are used. Okay, tomorrow we'll continue.
अब 1 महीना है शादी ला, मार्च में है भैया, ये रमजान एकदम पक्का सही बोले 1 महीना।
गए बापरे 29 दिन
और बाबा का है